So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Now I need to first of all let you know that I know I look like a pirate, but I really am not. So today we have the ability to give our donations or pledges if you would like. There's a basket up here today. If people would like the opportunity to put it in the basket, their pledge, they're welcome to do that. So let folks know also you can go to our website if you're finding us online today. You can do that for educational resources as well as to make a donation or to pay a pledge. That again is swanzeyucc.org. And there's going to be a tree planting ceremony that takes place at 11 o'clock. So you're welcome to come back, join us either physically or electronically for that as well. And today we are in the midst of changing our service just a little bit as we realized that our musicians not feeling well today, so Kyle is going to be able to sing for us today, bringing us to a time of worship with God of grace and God of glory.
God of grace and God of glory. Oh, I totally messed that up too. Let's try that again. Crap, I'm not practiced with a tuning fork. God of grace and God of glory, on thy people pour thy power. Round thine ancient church and story, bring its bud to glorious flower. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage, for the face of this hour, for the facing of this hour.
So hear these opening sentences as a prayer as well. Gather at the mountain of God's holiness. Gather, aware of those you left behind to be here. Gather to share God's presence. Today is a day of transformation for us and God's world. So let us pass our peace. God makes peace within us. Let us claim it. I was hoping that peace was coming to them as well. So God makes peace between us. So let us share it. May the peace of God be with you as well. Thank you. So today we have our ancient testimony. It's going to sound familiar because actually Pat also preached on this last week if you were able to tune in. I'm going to take a little bit of a different spin on it, but Marge is going to be reading that for us today.
Today's reading comes from Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 through 14. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come, make gods for us. Who shall go before us? As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, "Take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, formed it in a mold, and cast an image of a calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord." They rose early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to revel. The Lord said to Moses, "Go down at once. Your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have acted perversely. They have been quick to turn aside from the way that I commanded them. They have cast for themselves an image of a calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it, and said, These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. The Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, how stiff-necked they are. Now let me alone, so that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them. And of you I will make a great nation. But Moses implored the Lord his God, and said, O Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say, It was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains, and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce wrath, change your mind, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, how you swore to them by your own self, saying to them, I will multiply your descendants like the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have promised I will give to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever. And the Lord changed his mind about the disaster that he planned to bring on his people.
So what does it mean to be other? Can anybody give me a definition of what otherness is? What's that?
Not me.
Not you. I think that's probably about the best definition that we could find. It's not me. So how many not me's are out there? Right now I see about a whole bunch of them. So when it means not me, it could be your neighbor, right? That's not you. It could be, we talk about the God as the holy other. That's what the sacred is. But there's also parts inside of us that sometimes we've disavowed or cast off or gotten rid of, repressed. There's all types of things we can talk about. And we say, that's not me too. But I think today, one of the things that this scripture actually allows us to think about is this otherness. What do we do with otherness? In other words, this part that we consider to be not me, or not I, not ego. So we find ourselves again in this place that has been with this church in this town for over 280 years. It's a pretty nice fall day. I know we have winter clothes on, but all in all, what is it, about 40 degrees outside now, roughly, give or take? But I want you to imagine what it would be like here in winter. January. Who here could survive themselves without anything except for their own wits and maybe an axe, or whatever they would have brought here? Who here could have survived by themselves in the middle of winter 280 years ago? Anybody tough enough? Anybody skilled enough? At that point, you probably would need the other. You would need other people to be present, because if not, more than likely that's going to lead to an early death. Now, one of the things that I wanted to lead into the sermon with today is, does anybody know what Black Monday used to be? Do you remember that way back in the 80s? Well, I know most of us know what Black Friday is. That's coming after Thanksgiving. I'm not sure what it's going to look like this year, because obviously things being so different. But there was something called Black Monday, which was on October 19th, 1987. The stock market actually crashed. It lost, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 22.61%, which means if you had a dollar bill earlier in that morning that was invested, it wound up being worth about 75 cents by the end of the day. A lot of money disappeared. Now, I'm not going to give you an economic lecture today. That's not why I'm here. But I want to talk about a piece of art that appears in New York City not long after Black Monday. Does anybody know the Wall Street Bull or the Charging Bull? You know what that is? Or have you seen pictures of it? So it's there about the Wall Street Bull. Wikipedia says that it's a 7,100 pound bronze statue that's 11 feet tall, it's 16 feet long. It's an oversized sculpture that depicts a bull which is a symbol of the aggressive financial optimism and prosperity. It's actually leaning back on its haunches and with its head lowered as if it's ready to charge. The sculpture in other times is a popular tourist attraction which brings thousands of people to it, at least in non-COVID-19 times. But that was created in 1987 to remind people of the strength and power of the American people, said the artist. So this charging bull of Wall Street is just another reminder that during times of crisis, or perhaps in response to it, idols are erected. Now, the reason why I bring this up is the same can be said of the Hebrews. We have been methodically, and I mean methodically, plotting our way through the story of the Exodus. The congregation of Israel has left the past and its slavery behind. They navigate through what they fear to be their death. And as they continue their journey towards liberation, the congregation of Israel finds themselves confronted by the wilderness. And in this difficult place, they feel vulnerable and anxious. They feel disoriented and confused. They feel stuck and tense, sad, and even grief-stricken. And we too, quite frankly, are exhausted by this long story because in many ways it reflects our own. That congregation that we talked about with the Israelites began to question their existence. That congregation was looking for something certain rather than realizing what the wilderness is. The wilderness is this liminal place where transition and change become possible. There, the congregation will be able to shed its old identity and explore the possibility of becoming a people that moves towards the promised land. Now, a couple of weeks ago, or just based on your general knowledge, there are the 10 Commandments. Does anybody remember what the first 2 commandments are? I know Pat also mentioned them last week. But can anybody summarize the first 2 commandments? Okay, there's one. We got 2. The other is, just to summarize, other than what David said about have no other God before the God that has brought you out of Egypt. And the second is to make no idols. So the first 2 are significant in today's story. The first of which is what David has said, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Out of the house of slavery you shall have no other gods before me. And the second is, you shall not make for yourself an idol. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing those who reject me, but showing steadfast love to the 1000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. So what is it to make an idol? Can anyone give me an idea of what an idol is? Okay, something you worship? Something you put in place of God, perhaps? So, again, as I've said already, you may have recognized today's ancient testimony from what Pat preached on last week. I think he did a really great job, so if you haven't already seen it, please go back to our website or take a look on Facebook. But I want to go at it this week a little bit of a different way, with what is otherness in mind, and also with the notion of what scapegoating is, because I think that that's something that takes place all too much in our society, all too much in our world, and this can lead us into a way of talking about that. So today's story, just a part of it from the Message translation. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. Aaron answered to them, Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me. So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf. Then they said, These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. Moses had ascended the mountain into darkness as all of this is taking place at the base of that mountain. He has gone up the mountain to meet with Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When Moses is elsewhere and not readily seen, this golden bovine is formed. But here's the problem, you see. This very well may be a god or a goddess of Egypt, a place of their past bondage, a place they needed to leave. Perhaps this golden bovine may represent what they feel is lacking while they suffer in the wilderness. Rather than deal with those issues, they shift their attention and activity away from what they needed to face. The congregation of Israel looks back to a golden time that perhaps never really existed. And in doing so, they idolize another deity as well as their past. They have broken the first two commandments, placing a god before the living God and making an idol. See, remember in the wilderness, the Hebrews make a covenant and forge a sacred relationship with Yahweh. They become God and people. So my next question is, can anybody tell me what a substitute is? Not the real thing. Okay, so you could have a substitute teacher. That means it's not your real teacher. They're there for the day. I've heard of sugar substitutes. To me, for some reason, they don't quite taste as well. But the substitute isn't the real thing, like you said. So, not long after making this promise, and while Moses is on the mountain working with God, the people craft a substitute for God in a golden calf. They also find a substitute for Moses. It is Moses' own brother Aaron. But did the golden calf have the true divinity of Yahweh? Did Aaron have the same presence and character of Moses? These are substitutes, which means they are merely stand-ins or proxies for something else. But making substitutes, the Hebrews are denying what is real and do not deal with what they are experiencing. But see, there's another story that's actually in the history of the Hebrews that includes Moses and Aaron, which reveals how an act of substitution plays out psychologically as projection and displacement. It gives us terms that all of us already know, but I'll say more on that in a few moments. Does anybody know what Yom Kippur is, or do you even know when it was? It's the Day of Atonement. Exactly, that's what we're looking for, and it happened in September, the end of September. So, allow me to just really quickly summarize. Leviticus chapter 16 is where you find this from. It tells of Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, as David has let us know, which was at the end of September. To sum up the ritual, sacrifices of twos, which include various pairs of animals, are made. Finally, for the sins of the other, 2 goats are offered. One is killed. The taking of its life, spilling of its blood, and burning of its body is thought to be a means of atonement. The other goat, however, is not killed, but instead is loaded down with all the quote-unquote collective sins of the community. Bearing this weight, it is cast out of the community and in the wilderness to never return. So you may be saying at this point, so what? Well, this is some obscure ritual, you may say, that is millennia old and not even Christian. What does it have to do with us today? Well, everything. Who here can tell me what it is to scapegoat somebody? Or who here has ever been scapegoated or has felt it? It's not a comfortable thing, is it? See, unfortunately, this ritual tells us a little bit about what we do as human beings. From this ritual, again, we get the term scapegoat. Scapegoating remains a very active practice. It happens all the time as a person or a party is singled out for unmerited negative treatment or undeserved blame. With scapegoating, people want to remain blissfully unaware of their own complicity and guilt. Rather than deal with my own darkness or my own difficulties or my own confusion, my own anxiety, I put it or project it onto someone else. It's someone else's fault. someone else is to blame because I do not want to take responsibility for my part. So out of curiosity, is anybody out there feeling a little anxious these days? Just a little bit, or a lot. We're living in that type of world where anxiety is very present to us, where we wonder what's going to be brought next to us. What are we going to have to live through next? We feel as if the ground under us shakes and shifts. I don't have to remind you that we're living in tense times. Our anxiety is spiked. In fact, I think it's gone off the charts sometimes. So we want to be rid of this, right? We want not to face this world or this reality we're dealing with. We do not want to go into the wilderness if we're using the model of the ancient Hebrews. So we offer up a scapegoat. We do not want to go into the wilderness. See, this whole notion of scapegoating, we do it as individuals, we do it as families, and I have to make you aware of something that you already know, that uncomfortable fact that this is a pattern that exists in our country, and it exists in our leadership too. So as your pastor and as an analyst in training, I must make you aware of this, something that again you already know. I also must make you aware that scapegoating does not work. It may work in the short term, you can blame somebody else, but the problem remains, it's still there. If we decide to again symbolically kill and make a holocaust, in other words, a burnt offering, in other words, if we completely eradicate or drive away or disavow one into the wilderness because we do not want to go there, this is not going to fix the problem. The point is that we must do our own work. Face what we need to face in the wilderness, as uncomfortable and as disorienting as it is. We must go there, and the fact of the matter is we have to go through it. Because if we don't, the wilderness remains. It is still there. The hard reality is that you cannot send another into it or sacrifice another to it because you don't want to go. The only thing that saves the congregation of Israel is to go through the wilderness and work its way towards the promised land. And to scapegoat anyone, and I mean anyone, it will only ensure that the congregation of Israel or people wind up back at the wilderness again. But guess what? Next time the people will be even more exhausted. There will be even less resources, and the way through will be even more daunting. So we have the opportunity as a people, whether we're looking at as citizens, to work on this pattern so prevalent in our society and move towards a healthier way. It starts by not offering a scapegoat to either the altar or to the wilderness. It requires us not to burden one with the collective guilt or blame of all others. It requires not casting out and disavowing, in other words, destroying and eradicating one on behalf of the rest. See, we must again follow this overall narrative of our ancestors and their story of faith. We must be willing to move through the wilderness, which means we are moving not only towards the promised land, but towards the prophets. In the prophets, in the Psalms, God says, I do not want burnt offerings. I want a broken and contrite heart. I do not want burnt offerings. I want a faithful and loving spirit. This means a change in our own consciousness, our own awareness, our own way of being. We no longer split one off from the others to bear our burdens and carry our sins. We move from burnt offerings to heart offerings. We take responsibility for ourselves. We hold those of differing points of view and their diverse experiences, their dissimilar feelings and their contradictory beliefs. We hold everyone, all of them together as individual members in one body, whether it be the body of Christ or the United States of America. So this means creating a space for opposing viewpoints so they can be held together. It means witnessing to the divine presence at the center of each and all of us. It means accepting the call to be our own unique manifestation of the way which love can radiate into the world and Christ can reign. So, this day, may we learn from calves and from goats. May we stop projecting our gold and our garbage and start work on claiming it, so we may better the lives of ourselves, our community, and our world. Amen.
In the midst of good dimensions, in the face of changing ways, who will lead the pilgrim peoples wandering their separate ways? God of rainbow, fiery pillar, leading where the eagles soar. We, your people, ours the journey, now and evermore.
So one of the things we get to do when we gather together on Sunday, and when we do it in person, and I'm glad to be able to do this, we get to share our joys and concerns, those things that are taking place in our own lives, the lives of the people we care about, the life of the world. We then lift them up in prayer. So this day, are there joys and concerns that people would like to lift up so that we can put it into the midst of our prayer? If there is, please just say them. Yep.
A week ago Sunday, I lost electricity in half of my house. So, what's today's Sunday? Friday, I had an electrician, actually two of them at my house all day to pinpoint where it was, the problem, which of course was caused by the little four-legged creatures that like to live in your house. So they did figure it out. They got me all hooked up. I had every blessed socket opened up so they could figure it out. So we have full electricity back again.
So power is restored.
Yes.
Okay. Are there others who would like to? Yeah, Barb.
Joy to be able to go to church again since February.
Good to see you, Barb. And it's actually a pretty nice day. The sun's coming out. So, who else is anyone? Sandy.
I'm sitting right here. You all who are sitting in the warm sun can't see it, but the trees down there are just glorious. Oh my gosh. So I would say thanks for the beauty of the earth.
Hmm?
Also continued prayers for 5-year-old Henry, who is still in the hospital and apparently will be there for quite a while.
So, prayers for Henry in the midst of his distress and his illness, just being 5. Hopefully, is there any prognosis at all for him, or?
Well, last week he had a tracheotomy, and they're thinking that's going to be there for a year or two, because it will take that long for his lungs to recover. And now he has some eye problems and there's spots in his brain. All these new things are coming out.
So our prayers are with Henry at this time, and we're also thankful for the beauty that we have all around us, and sometimes we don't even see. So thank you for recognizing that. Is there, Cindy? So thank you for all people that were involved in the supper yesterday. Well, it was ham supper, is that right? I got to smell ham when I went home, so I know it was pretty tasty, I was told. So, are there others who would like to share anything at this time? Sandy?
Actually, today was, and you might not have been able to mention this since there are no children here, but we were supposed to have given out the Bibles to the 4th graders today. And I would like to ask for prayers and blessings on those children, and we will deliver the Bibles at some point. And it's the Morrison children, and Taylor and LaRoche, and Maddie Taylor.
So our prayers are with some of the children of the church today, especially those entering 4th grade, or somewhere around there, the Morrisons, Kaylin as well, and Maddie too. So just to remember them in the midst of our prayers, and we're thankful that they're amongst us when they can be. So are there other joys or concerns that people would like to lift up this day? And if I don't see it, throw your hand up, because this eye works only so well, but I don't see anybody else out there so far. So if that's the case, let's turn our hearts, our minds, the very center of ourselves to that which has given us life. Holy One and living God, we are here at this site again, a place that this church has returned to for almost 280 years. We are still here. We could say that. And we know that if we are wise, if we decide to be, this church will still continue. It will still continue to be part of the bedrock of this community, helping guidance, helping where it can, being part of the community. We're also thankful for the stories that we have, these sacred stories. Sometimes they reveal to us things about our nature as human beings. Sometimes we realize that we don't put first things first. We don't put those things that are important to the front of the line. Sometimes, rather than getting caught up in what's not always what's other than me, that we forget that otherness is important, that it adds to experience. And quite frankly, if all there was me, who else could I care about? Why am I making the same mistakes? Well, because I only could do so much. I only know so much. I need other people to help round out what takes place. May we continue to find your way, and may we realize in this way there's a place for everyone, that no one needs to be scapegoated, but all can be brought. All can come. So this day we lift up the prayers of these people, whether they've had power restored, or for young ones who we remember, but also for young ones who are in the midst of their own illness and distress. We thank you that this community comes together still for worship and to do suppers and to find ways to be important not only to one another, not only to you, but to the community as well. So now in the silence of ourselves, we turn towards you with prayers we just want to say thank you and express gratitude for. But we also turn to you because we realize that darkness is real, it is scary, and sometimes we would ask that light and love would be born there as well. Abba, we know that Jesus called you this, and it's like something such as Father or Papa. And God, we know that this is a good place to begin, but we know it does not include everything that you are, for that is far beyond the words we could ever give to it. But we know that you're with us nonetheless, present even in the good times. Sometimes it's easy to find, but even in the hard times, you're there too. May we continue to rely upon that presence and know that you are there, come what may. Amen. But let us also now join in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. I know David also wanted to have the chance to talk a little bit about what's going to be taking place after our service here with the tree planting. Is now an appropriate time, do you think? Okay.
Damon with that beautiful blue stole and the eye patch. You look like Bluebeard.
Well, I gotta let you know he kills his wife, so I gotta be careful.
Next month on the 11th, which is in this country celebrated as Veterans Day, is also the 400th anniversary of the landing of the Pilgrims in off Cape Cod. That was in 1620. And Mr. Hansel of the Elm Research Institute in Keene, who's been working to bring back the elm trees to this area that were devastated by the Dutch elm disease, is a descendant of one of the Mayflower Pilgrims, and he's really quite interested in the Pilgrims. Our church, of course, has roots in the Pilgrim story. We heard about the real old roots today. But I want to just tell you, Mr. Hansel anyway is made some of his new elm trees that are resistant available. And so we've been given one, which we're going to plant. Well, it's half planted right now, but we're going to finish planting it in a few minutes. And there used to be an elm tree right there where we're putting it. There was even an old stump until yesterday, and Bruce Tatro was kind enough to bring his tractor and pull the stump out. And the elm tree has a very old history, not only in Keene but in our country. The Liberty Tree in Boston Common was where the Patriots prior to the Revolution met. That was an elm tree. This elm tree, we hope, will be here long after all of us are gone. One of the things that Mr. Hansel and I are so keen on about the Pilgrims is something called the Mayflower Compact. There were 102 pilgrims on board the Mayflower, and they were in a boat that had 1,500 square feet. Does anybody know how many square feet is in your house? 1,500 square feet is pretty small. And 102 people, can you imagine all the scapegoating, all the disagreements? Because they weren't all pilgrims. Some were sinners, some they called them saints and sinners. There was a little bit of everything, just like our society today. And so on board, when they sighted what's now Provincetown at the end of Cape Cod on November 11th, they made a covenant with one another, which is an old Congregational Calvinist kind of word. It's called covenant or compact, of how they were going to live together. And what's interesting in 1620 is this was probably the first time since the Athenians had a democratic government in old Athens. They promised that they would together, as the members of this colony, make laws, make decisions. It was the first instance of government by the consent of the governed. And so that became a very significant principle in our society. One, we know about the congregation. We have a meeting called the annual meeting. We make our own decisions. Nobody imposes it upon us. We make our own decisions. Our towns are governed this way. While Swanzey no longer has a town meeting, we at least all vote on who was going to be our leaders. And of course, in our nation, we vote for a Congress who usually gets along together. So the Mayflower Compact is a very significant event, and on the plaque, which is not ready yet but will be installed hopefully next month, it says the 400th anniversary of the founding of this nation because of the compact. One of the interesting things about the compact are the names that are listed below. I have never talked about the Pilgrims without finding a few people in the crowd who have an ancestor mentioned. Do any of you know if any of your families are mentioned here? If so, this will be the first time I never.
No, but there's a church member named right at the bottom there, but that's an ancestor.
Is that right?
John Goodman?
Yeah. He is related to that. In fact, I asked him about that. It's not the same John Goodman, but
I didn't really think it was.
now
Not that old.
also on this plaque we're going to mention somebody a little more current. The Reverend Damon Anderson. If you have a copy of the plaque's going to look like, and I wanted to acknowledge Damon's ministry and years with us. Something that we're all grateful for, and very sad to see it coming to an end. But Damon, I left 3 churches in my ministry. It's very hard every time because you have friends and people that you've been with through death and birth and marriage and all kinds of stuff. It's like your family, but it's also part of life. It's part of going on to what God's calling you to do now. So we hope, just like those 102 pilgrims on the Mayflower, leaving one life behind and coming to a new country, we hope you'll find the same blessing wherever you wind up.
Thank you.
It'd be great if we had an older member and a very young member with help with the shovels. You're not going to have to do a lot of shoveling, but when we plant the tree, and I think we've also got a prayer that Joan is going to read for us that day, and I think we have some coffee and cookies. Guess who made the coffee? Jim. If you feel comfortable about it, what are the cookies too? You made those, Linda. Oatmeal raisin, my favorite. So we'll have a little chance. We'll want to wear masks while we're down there, and when you're drinking coffee, you have to take your mask down. But we'll hope to see all of you there. Thank you very much. God bless everyone.
So thanks to David for being able to orchestrate all of this, and thanks to the congregation for the tree too. For those that don't know, I've been planting trees over at the parsonage for years, so I find it very significant to me that there will be a tree there to remember me as well. So would you lead us out today with I'll do a benediction after you sing "Let There Be Peace on Earth." And as we all know it, if you would join in too, if you feel comfortable, please.
All right, everybody's gonna be singing. This is your pitch. Ready, and let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, a peace that was meant to be, with God as creator. Children all are we. Everybody, let us walk with each
other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be my moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
So may we go from this place that has been significant to this church for 280 years. May we go from here knowing that always new life is possible. So may you feel the sun, whether it be on your face or on your back. May it let you have the energy that you need to carry you into the future. So go from here with love. Go from here always with peace.